Hi, everyone. Happy February. Welcome to our online conversation with Asian filmmakers in horror. My name is Jess Vu. I'm the communications manager at CAPE. Our team at CAPE is so excited to team up with Shudder, the premier streaming platform for all things horror for our post-Valentine's Day, post-Super Bowl weekend. We have an amazing group of people tonight, including the Bang brothers, who were part of our inaugural CAPE list in 2019. And who also directed They Lived in the Grey, which is premiering tomorrow on Shudder. In addition, we have New Zealand-based filmmaker Roseanne Lang, who also helmed Shadow in the Clouds. But I will transition it to Mike Manilow from the Nerds of Color, who will moderate our discussion. Hey, Mike, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. To everyone out there on the internet, good evening. For those of you wondering what that was, it was a dated and lame attempt at a Hitchcock reference, so I apologize for that. But this is the Cape USA and Shudder Asian Filmmakers in Horror panel. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Mike Manalo. I'm a journalist from the Nerds of Color. And for those of you who don't know, a journalist is really just a psycho horror movie buff and a bit of a snob, if I'm going to be honest. But that means that I couldn't be more psyched out of my mind for tonight's panel, because we've got count them three, amazing filmmakers with us tonight. And first up, if I can introduce, we have an amazing filmmaker who you might know as part of the Flat 3 Productions team, who brought us Friday Night Bites and Viceland's Creamery. She is the mastermind, writer, director behind last year's really amazing, really fun, action-packed monster movie, Shadow in the Cloud, which you can view right now on Hulu. Please give it up for Roseanne Liang.
Hey. Thanks,
Sorry,
Mike.
guys. Hey, Roseanne, thank you for being here. I hope you don't mind. I'm using a little fanfare thing because we are virtual, we're not in person, and I'm creating my own fanfare for you guys. So I hope that's all right.
Wow. Yeah, okay, cool. Thank you. Love it.
Of course. Next up, we've got the Brothers of the Hour. Their latest terrifying feature, They Live in the Grey, premieres tomorrow, February 17th, only on Shudder. Please give it up for the Bang brothers, Abel and Burley Bang.
Hey, guys.
Thank you guys so much for being here. Again, it's such a tremendous honor. I talking with you guys. You guys are just amazing filmmakers. Before we get started, I do want to give a shout out to our hosts, Cape and Shudder. You guys right now are hosting a contest on Cape's Instagram at Cape USA, where they'll be giving away 1-year subscriptions to Shudder to 10 lucky fans. Wait, hang on. Can I win? No, I'm being told I'm not eligible, but everyone else who's watching right now can definitely win. You have until midnight. Go to @capeusa.com and enter the contest, and hopefully you will get 1 year of terror from Shudder. So having said all that, I think we can go ahead and jump in if you guys are ready. Yeah. All right, yeah. Let's do this. All right. So all of us, as we know, are fans of horror. And as fans of horror, we know that horror is such a complex genre to the point where it's got to be subdivided into different subgenres. For me, I'm a huge fan of exorcism movies. I'm a huge fan of haunted house movies. I'm a huge fan of monster movies. And I got to ask all of you guys, what subgenres appeal to you guys the most as fans and as filmmakers? And if I can go in reverse alphabetical order, we'll start with Roseanne, then Burley, then Abel. What are your favorite subgenres of horror?
My favorites are the ones that get under my skin, the psychological ones, the ones that have intense allegory with the now. For instance, I feel like the one that's really stuck with me over the years is It Follows, about sexually transmitted disease and sexual, I guess, I don't know what you'd call that. Just a kind of, it really gets under my skin, and the horror is so, like, it's one of, like, I think I've been so desensitized to horror because my auntie showed me terrible movies when I was just a kid, and I had all my nightmares when I was a kid, and I'm very desensitized to it. So jump scares don't do it for me anymore. It's like someone who's used to hot chilies, and you just need to up the chiliness, and I feel that's how I feel with horrors, but with It Follows, that really got under my skin in a way that I stays with me, and that's me.
I love it. It Follows is such a good movie. Burley and Abel, how about you guys?
Yeah, well, for me, psychological, supernatural horror, supernatural drama, and I'm also a huge fan of just kaiju films.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with everything that Burley just said. But I think when sci-fi horror is done well, like The Thing or Alien, like it's, yeah, I think that's a subgenre that I'm really hoping to see, really come back, because all the great sci-fi horror, it's it's a bit dated.
Yeah, it seems like most of them are from the 80s or
Yeah.
90s or so. So like, I would love it for them to like brace the screens again.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's been a while since we've seen a really good sci-fi horror movie. Of course, we had Shadow in the Cloud last year, which Roseanne, I'm sure, if we can call, kind of call that sci-fi horror. It's very kaiju based, it's very monster movie based, but there's some sci-fi kind of influences in there, which I kind of love. So I think at some point we're going to see you guys bring back that sci-fi horror tinge, the same way that Ridley Scott brought to Alien, and but yeah, I love that genre too.
Yeah, you don't see it very often. Yeah, there's only a few like really great examples of that. Yeah, I agree.
Event Horizon, such a good movie. Yeah, right. I remember watching that when I was a kid, and I had nightmares for weeks. It was horrible.
Yep.
But yeah, we need more Event Horizons for sure.
Yes.
Going back to just the earliest days of horror, at least in American cinema, we take a look at the Universal monster movies by Todd Browning, by James Whale, and how horror has really evolved because of filmmakers like Hitchcock, but Cronenberg as well. And then you also have Carpenter, and you guys got an Evil Dead poster in the background, which is one of my favorites, Raimi. There's so many influential horror filmmakers out there that have just left their stamp on American horror cinema. And I got to ask, growing up, did you guys have any specific filmmakers in the genre that you looked up to that really influenced the way that you work today? I think we can go alphabetical this time with Abel and Burley and then Roseanne.
Yeah. I think you can see in the poster behind us. Sam Raimi, huge, influence on us, especially, when you're, starting off as a filmmaker, as an independent filmmaker, when you don't have a lot of resources, you don't have a lot of cash, you just don't really have anything, and you have to do everything very, very bare bones. And I think that's where, like for us, we gravitated towards these directors that work within this horror space, this genre that allowed for these filmmakers to kind of thrive with limited resources. And for us, it's like, wow, that's a great way to enter into this field. It's a great genre to work with, and that's unlike your maybe your action movies or your comedy movies, where you really need to have that big comic comedian in your movie to really make it work, or you need to have a lot of resources to do the action sequences if it's a big action genre. But I think horror drew us because it allowed for us to tell stories.
And the thing is that, with the genre of horror, you have a sense of, a real freedom. You can do whatever the hell you want to do, right? I mean, you look at Sam Raimi's, the very first Evil Dead, it's horrible. It's also a comedy. It's slapstick, it's a lot of things, and so it's like, a soup where you find everything that covered and you sort of toss it in and hope that it works, and it's a lot of fun. And so for us, like, horror drew us in because of how malleable, that genre is, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. It absolutely does.
I agree.
Yeah. Roseanne, how about you? Any filmmakers?
Well, I mean, all those things, I grew up watching those big budget ones like Alien, and I would like Terminator 2 is my all-time favorite movie, and you could say that there are horror elements to that when he's cutting his arm open and he just moves his hand around. So I guess I grew up on big budget, but then you realize when you're starting to make movies that you don't need a huge budget to get under people's skin. Yeah. And I love the cross genre part of it as well. I love comedy, but I love not broad comedy. I like comedy that kind of sucker punches me, that takes me by surprise in the same way that horror takes me by surprise. Like the work of Ari Aster, now that we're talking about, people who influence us right now. I just think that Hereditary is one of the darkest, blackest of comedies that I can imagine. Like the way that movie goes at the end of that movie is just so unexpected. and it exhilarates me because it feels like we're chemists mixing genres together, and horror is in there absolutely, and the spirit of horror is in there. But we can do so much with it. It's kind of like the every chemical that works with every other genre.
Mm. I definitely agree with you on that. And great call out, by the way, with Ari Aster. You see a lot of those darkly sick and twisted elements also in Midsummer, just present all over. And it's just, they're so messed up and so disturbing movies. But every now and then you're kind of surprised by how much they make you laugh and they make you giggle, whether it's nervous laughing or it's intentional laughing. Fantastic call outs, guys. Really. The thing is, though, there's really this universality to fear and to horror that really transcends culture and transcends language. And when we think about it, we've been talking about, the American cinema, so far. But when you think about it, there are films in South Korea and Japan and China that have been released by, brilliant artists like Miike or Nakata or the Pang brothers. That have really influenced American horror as we see it today as well. So I have to ask, who are your favorite Asian horror filmmakers and your favorite Asian horror films?
I don't have it's hard to choose, right? But since you brought Miike, I really like his Gozu. It's such a weird, twisted nightmare. You have no idea where the film's going, and I just love it. It's a film that I go back to now and then.
And there's a film, Audition.
Yeah,
also Miike too.
Oh man, it's so creepy and frightening. Yeah.
I can't get past the classic J horror times. I think everyone remembers where they were when they watched the end of Ring, the original Ring thing. I was in my friend's flat, lying on the couch, and I was absolutely petrified. It was an old TV. There was a VCR. We weren't watching it on VCR. Like, oh God, maybe we were watching it on VCR. That's even more terrifying. Anyway, so classic J horror like that, and also when you talk about horror and mixing of genres, like Bong Joon-ho's work, of course, The Host, and even Parasite has that horror element.
Oh yeah,
to it.
oh absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're such brilliant filmmakers, and it's kind of great that in recent years especially we've started to see that influence on American cinema, but also people embracing those films in and of themselves. Like Bong Joon-ho has just skyrocketed beyond just borders in terms of popularity. So I'm loving that I'm seeing it. Do you guys have typically a preference between American Western horror movies or Eastern horror movies?
I don't know. Like I don't have a preference. I think if it's scary, it's scary. If it's got good storytelling, it's got good storytelling. And I think horror is one of those genres that's allowed, like you said, Mike, fear transcends culture. I think it's part of just human biology. We have a fear of the unknown. And I think when you can do that well and weave that into a story, regardless of, the origination of that story, I don't think it really, really matters.
But I have to say that, I really enjoy the things that are coming out of, South Korea. I think that, there's a lot of, films within the genre that are either, they are giving us, really, new original content, or they are taking something that's familiar and repackaging it in a way where it feels fresh.
And it's actually not surprising to see, South Korean thrillers and horrors blow up here in the West. Like we've seen, much of, Bong Joon-ho's work, long before Parasite. It's like, why isn't this being embraced? But, it's here now. So, I think, really excited with, a lot of stuff that's come out of, South Korea.
Of course.
I think what I'm really excited about is the cross-pollination, right? We're also influenced by taking influences from all over the world. Indonesian horror or, Southeast Asian horror would be the more that I guess we've grown up all our lives. Growing up in New Zealand, I've grown up being very literate, seeing Western stories and putting myself inside them or seeing myself inside them and being able to be literate in them. And now what I'm really enjoying is that Western cultures are becoming literate in Asian cinema as well. And it's only going to get richer the more cross-pollination there is, I reckon.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't agree more. Just when you think about cinema in general, just the effects that different cultures have on different styles of cinema, you know, they can make classics. That's how classics are made. You know, I mean, people think about the different influences that they get from not just what they see in American cinema, but everywhere else. And that ends up transcending and you know, cross-pollinating and evolving the genre in general. So I really couldn't agree more with all of you guys. If I can get into some of the more film-specific questions now, for Abel and Burley, you know, They Live in the Gray premiering tomorrow on Shudder. Everyone needs to watch this movie. I gotta give you guys so much praise on this. You know, I've seen it. I loved it. I think it's tremendous, but it's tremendous not just because it's a genuinely scary horror movie, but it's also incredibly human as well. There's this emotional aspect to it that's just completely, you know, brilliantly done. And one of the things that I ended up walking away with, and without spoiling anything for everyone who needs to see this movie, you know, it's almost scarier sometimes dealing with real life and dealing with trauma than it is ghosts and supernatural forces. And I wanted to ask you guys your perspective on this. Why do you think that is?
Well,
you know, I think, you know, like, you know, like, you know, what you said, real life is, you know, scarier, you know, real life, you know, is scarier than fiction. And so I think for us, like with this film, you know, we wrote this and directed this film from a very personal, you know, place. It's, you know, it's based on, you know, the experience that our family went through in terms of like grieving over our third brother who passed away. I think it's Tom. He passed away, you know, about a week after he was born. And like our, you know, our mother didn't, you know, she didn't show any signs of, you know, grieving over this, you know. And so, you know, living, you know, in an Asian family, you tend to sort of like not talk about grief, right? And so for us, this film was sort of like put us through this cathartic process to heal as a family.
And it actually wasn't, you know, the character of Claire, you know, it's highly inspired by, you know, just us, you know, witnessing our mother throughout the years. And it wasn't actually until just a few years ago that our family finally went to his gravesite, and to see my parents finally, you know, weep for the first time, like for, you know, our brother. And had he been alive, he would be a year younger than me only. He would be turning 37 this year. And so to see our parents go through almost 40 years of just of silence, and then finally grieving, you know, it's, you know, and witnessing that, and being moved by, you know, it's such power to just, you know, like when you take these burdens and you just, you know, take it off your shoulders, and grieve and be able to close that chapter and move on. You know, I think we, you know, what we wanted to do was really bring the real life horrors,
it's sort of punctuated with, you know, with what you find in, you know, your standard horror films, right?
Yeah.
But really the core of the story is you know, we wanted to tell a dramatic story. You know, we went into this saying, you know what, we know the horror genre pretty well. Let's try to make a drama.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
And then, you know, just sort of like put in the horror elements where we need to put it.
And at the same time, to make it very, you know, Asian American, you know, it's, you know, like when you talk about death in the family, or just any kind of trauma, you know, that's not something that gets discussed maybe in a lot of Asian families, and we carry a lot of these burdens. And I think for us, you know, it was so important to be able to tell this Asian American story. And I would go as far as to say too that, you know, and you've seen the film, there are many moments where you see Michelle, the character of Claire, and a lot of the outfits that she actually has in the movie are taken straight out of our mom's closet. Like, we actually went through her closet. My mom hoards like literally everything, and so we went in and we took every single piece of clothing that we thought would look good, you know, on camera from that time period. So from the clothes that she had from the 80s and from the 90s, we took all of that and we gave it to Michelle. So some of the outfits, or a lot of the outfits that she has on in the movie, are actually straight out of, it belongs to our mom. Yeah.
Well, I love that they say that the best works of art come out because you write something personal inside of them. And, not even knowing that this was inspired by a lot of really things that were personal to you, what I got from this was just this emotional movie that felt so moving. And knowing that there's this personal connection to you guys, it makes so much sense why it's so powerful and why it's so good. So thank you guys for what it's worth for sharing that with us, and putting that to paper and putting that on film, because I think that that's incredibly important for people to talk about these things. And if this movie helps provide that medium for people to do that, then I think that all the more powerful. So thank you for that. We are getting some questions from the chat, which I will get to in just a second, I promise, everyone online. But I do have a specific geeky question for Roseanne, because honestly, I had so much fun watching Shadow in the Clouds. Here's the best thing about it, in my opinion. When you think about the horror genre, it's been one of the really successful genres in terms of highlighting feminism and strong female characters. And even going back to Laurie Strode or Ellen Ripley or Buffy Summers, you've got these amazing heroines that just fight back and that are just so brilliant. And as a filmmaker, you, through Shadow in the Cloud, have put your feminist stamp on the genre yourself with Maude Garrett, who I think is an iconic character, in my opinion. What do you think it is about the genre that allows for this feminism to really shine through?
I guess it's equal opportunity. Maybe fear not only transcends culture, but it also transcends gender and race and class, perhaps. Mm-hmm. It's equal, as you say, it's equal opportunities, and there's a long and storied history of women in movies, from Scream Queens to, Halloween, this Halloween series, and women fighting back. And so I guess how to put a new spin on that. And, I guess I thought, again, when I was, and the history behind my project is pretty weird, because it was written originally by a man who has been accused of sexual assault and rape. And I received this project and had to ask myself, why am I doing this? And the answer had to be, well, I only do this if I get to make the movie that I want to make and get to say something that I want to say. And thankfully, the producers completely, backed me in doing that. The movie that you see is my movie, even though it came from a very weird foundation. The person who scooped it out of the creative ether was not a friend of feminism, from all accounts, which is also something weird about the allegory of today, that it's so much more complicated. We were finishing the movie in edit towards the beginning of the pandemic, and we were all going through a trauma that we hadn't anticipated. And we were all, I guess, being superheroes in lots of different ways. If you remember that time, it was also around Black Lives Matter. It was towards the end of the Trump administration. And it felt like there's a lot of things to be afraid of. You're talking about true life is scarier than fiction. And it felt like we were dealing with so many strands of fear all at once. And that, I guess, was what I thought Maude Garrett was. She is everything. I didn't want her to be the Mary Sue.
Yeah.
Do you know that term, the Mary Sue?
Yep.
I just think that she is. And she is what lots of women go through. And not just women. Any person who's underrepresented, any person who's not privileged, they have to go through this, and they have to prove themselves on so many different levels. And I hoped that allegory would come through. And it's not necessarily like feminism is equality. When you think about it, it's not misandry. And that's the problem with the world today, is that we've become so polarized that when people hear feminists, they think man-hating. But to me, I think Shadow in the Cloud is truly a equal opportunities movie.
Yeah. I loved that about it, by the way. The challenges that Maude has to go through, and we're not just talking about gremlins in the sky or villainous, warplanes that are shooting at you, but the people that she's even just working alongside, the men that she's working alongside, and the toxicity, that in and of itself is probably the biggest challenge in the movie. And the fact that she's able to just rise above that, and that comes across in that character, that made it so brilliantly beautiful for me. And honestly, not putting it out there for any guys that write female protagonists, but I feel like a character like Maud couldn't have been as successful in the hands of a male that doesn't know what it's like to go through these challenges. So the fact that you took it over, and the fact that you put yourself into Maud's character, brilliant, effing brilliant. I have to say.
Thank you so much. And I want to say, the people on this panel and the people who are probably listening know what things have been said to us in real life, right? You wouldn't believe the stuff we write down. If we wrote it in a script, we'd get a note. It's a bit on the nose. It's a bit over the top. But this is the note that I got when the movie came out. I was like, come on, you're playing this toxicity over the top, and you're like, guy, just walk a mile in our shoes, right? And try and see what we've been through, and take it seriously. This actually happens. Women are being killed out there, not just women. People are being killed out there. And anyway, sorry, I'm clearly on a soapbox right now.
No, I love that you are, and I think that this is the forum to do it. And I'm glad that you're, don't ever get off the soapbox, Roseanne, because we need you on there.
Thank you.
Of course. Now, if I were watching me, I would definitely, for this long in the podcast, I would honestly want a massive change of pace. So I'm going to do that and shift to a couple of audience questions, if you guys are okay with that. So our first one comes from Joey Bagtask 515. Joey, shout out to you. Joey wanted to ask you guys, what makes a scene successfully scary? And when something isn't scary, why do you think that is?
I think what makes scenes successfully scary is and it's very hard to do, is if you're able to make the audience not prepare themselves for if you're for example, a jump scare, right? You don't prepare them for it.
Or like if because there are many different types of scares. There's the jump scares, there's the creep scares, there's the unnerving mood that you could put into a movie, and for us, I think we would like to take our audiences to places that seem just so normal, maybe so mundane, so everyday life, but then stick in it that scary component.
If you could normalize the scare, then it'll work. I mean, Sam brought up the Ring earlier. Like the TV, right? Who would have thought the TV would be as scary as the ocean? When Jaws came out, right?
Yeah.
But, the TV became a thing to fear.
Yeah, because after that movie, you
walk across the living room, you're like, the TV is off, and it has that dark screen, and I'm anticipating this dark-haired woman to like come out of the TV any moment now. So yeah.
I love the comment. That's so. It is. Sorry, Mike.
No, Roseanne. I was just gonna kick it to you.
The taking the comment and making it like terrifying. Like, sorry to go on about it follows, but just a person walking towards you, just a person walking, just not running, just like walking towards you, inexorably getting closer to you, is made so terrifying in that movie, and they managed to do it with the sound effect, with everything. It's so true what you're saying about jump scares. I'm sick of them. I'm annoyed. If someone just mixes the sound up just to literally make me physiologically jump because my ears are hurting, that's a cheap scare to me, and I find it really annoying. But if you can, absolutely, I'd watch as much as you can, but then make it your own. And I think this is something where horror is so exciting because it's about innovation. It's about you're constantly pioneering something. I think the scare, you're constantly pioneering a scare. And I watched, I was obsessed with Mike Flanagan's Haunting of Hill House for a bit. And what I noticed with him was that he held reaction shots 1 or 2 beats longer than you normally would in an edit. Because, when you have an instinct to cut, you go, cut now. He just kind of moved the timeline a few beats longer so that you were on this person's, it's been done, I guess you could say that the DNA in Haunting of Hill House comes from Stanley Kubrick's
Shining
masterpiece, The Shining. The Shining, just holding on Danny's face for way too long. Anyway, that's there's lots of ways you can do it, but innovate it and make it your own.
I agree with you guys. When you normalize horror, you know, to the point where that's what stays with you. Those are the movies that stay with you. When you start to do these, oh, you know, somebody's looking one way and the music is tense, but then it just stops. And then all of a sudden there's a jump scare. It becomes predictable because it ends up happening over and over and over again, to the point where, you know, horror movies become like, you know, music drops at raves, you know, where you have the beat, and then it stops. And then you know what's going to happen. The beat's going to come back up again, you know. So it becomes a little bit tedious, predictable, and just by that factor, I think less scary. But when you do have a movie like It Follows, again, Roseanne, I love that you're bringing it up as an example, because it's such a good scary movie. I swear, after I watched that movie, I was just staring at random people on the road, giving them the stink eye, because I thought that they were going to follow me.
Right?
And,
It's terrifying.
it's that paranoia, that sense that something could come after you, that I think scares
Make sure there's 2 exits every room you're in. Just make sure there's
That's right.
2 doors or a door and a window. Yeah.
Follow the rules. Yeah. Make sure that you have an escape plan. Indeed. We also got another question from VVV519. I'm realizing now actually that these are timestamps and not part of people's names. So I am sorry, Joey, that I thought 515 was part of a name. It's not. But yes. What do you think about reincarnation as a theme? Yeah. I guess, Roseanne, I'd love to start with you.
I've actually read a number of scripts about reincarnation, and I think for me, I feel like reincarnation is inherently a safety net. Because what scares me is dying or not existing or going to hell or whatever. I'm an agnostic. I'm not religious, but I think that you know, either the abyss or hell is what's scary to me. Where in reincarnation, it feels like, oh, it doesn't matter what I do in this life, then there's nothing to be afraid of because I'll get another one. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking about it wrong. I'm sure there's a way to make reincarnation scary. If you can make a person walking towards you scary, you can make reincarnation scary. Yeah. Very
true. Burley and Abel, what about you guys?
I think it could be terrifying, and maybe this is a movie idea here, but what if, you know, you reincarnate and you realize that your past self was a serial killer?
Ooh.
You know, so then, like, what do you do with that information, right? And so I think there's room to play with that theme. You know, for us, I don't think we've touched on that theme before in any of our ideas, but maybe that's what we'll work on. I don't know.
That sounds interesting now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm actually very terrified of reincarnation, because then, you know, I'm afraid of being on a loop. You know, you keep going. You know, like I guess in a way, like if I were to reincarnate, I think I'd rather just like die off and not exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because yeah,
there's something about, you know, thematically, I think, about reincarnation. Like, and I think Roseanne, I think you hit on a point here about, you know, maybe like you might do away with consequences. I don't know, and I think for me, I like to believe that our actions, what we decide to do, can carry, you know, good or bad consequences.
Otherwise, we're just playing GTA. You know,
absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, you know, that's why, you know, I've never really thought of reincarnation as a theme. Yeah.
Very good to hear. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what I would think about it as a theme myself. Although I will say I enjoyed Happy Death Day. I feel like that's kind of the time loop reincarnation theme. It's a good schlocky, fun movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if it got deep into the theme of reincarnation per se, but it is a really enjoyable movie. So yeah, I think if you could do a deep version of Happy Death Day, maybe that's where your reincarnation movie lies. But yeah, and a very interesting question. Thank you guys for that. I want to, if it's okay, highlight something that, you know, I admired so much about the work that all of you guys have done, and especially since we're here on behalf of Cape. as filmmakers, you guys are working incredibly hard to ensure that Asian and Asian American actors are given a chance to shine in roles that typically don't go to people of color. And to me, that's incredibly important and incredibly needed today, not just in the horror genre, but in filmmaking in general. You know, in They Live in the Gray, you know, Abel, Burley, you guys got a phenomenal performance out of Michelle Krusek and Ken Kirby, who are just brilliant in the movie. And Roseanne, you know, for your short like Do No Harm, all the way to even your work in Creamery, you've been putting the spotlight on Asian actors in this industry for so long. So with filmmakers like you leading the example, I need to ask, do you think that we're indeed starting to see changes in representation happening today? And if you don't think that we're seeing enough, why do you think it's an uphill battle? I'd love to start with Roseanne and then go to Abel and Burley.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely seeing it. I think it's been announced that I'm working on the Netflix adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I can definitely see we're working really, really, really hard to break the mold and also make sure that the right opportunities are being given to the right people. So in that sense, I'm currently working on a project that is doing that. But I hope that doesn't mean we've solved it. That doesn't mean that we don't keep shouting it from the rooftops and saying that we need to change the culture, because out there in town, certainly there's this feeling, and this was so Do No Harm was a prequel to a kind of a love letter to Hong Kong action that I was making, that I wanted a Pan-Asian cast for. This was back in 2017, so 5 years ago. And I remember, you know, taking that script around town, and the feedback we got consistently was, "Oh, there aren't any Asian stars to get you to the budget level that you want to." And I know this was pre Crazy Rich Asians and pre Shang-Chi and pre a lot of amazing films, but I think there's still this feeling in Hollywood that we don't have the broad range of Pan-Asian talent that we do in other, you know, groups of talent. And I think we just need to keep, you know, I mean, the fact that your movie is coming out on Shudder, it's a Shudder original. We need to keep doing that. You know, we must stay the course and keep going, and don't let anyone tell us that we've solved it. And we've got to be able to take the mistakes as well. We've got to be able to be as mediocre as white people are allowed to be. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, that's a bit contentious, but
I didn't think so. I thought it was well said. So
yeah. I think, Roseanne, you're absolutely right. I think, you know, yes, you know, starting to see the change, you know, in this industry, and you know, the one thing that's you know, incumbent upon us filmmakers and even audiences is to, you know, to point out, you know, the right way of going about it and the wrong way of going about it. You know, like, you know, I don't want people to just simply put in an Asian person, you know, because that's okay. We got our token Asian guy or our token Asian lady in the movie. But I think for us filmmakers, you know, we come from a place of telling stories with authenticity. And so I think for us, you know, for Burley and I, you know, getting They Live in the Gray made, like,
it was a huge challenge.
It was a huge challenge.
Told so many times to say, hey, you know, we're interested in your film, but can you replace, you know, your Asian characters with you know, Caucasian characters, or can you at least make the Asian character a supporting character instead, you know, or the villain or whatever it is, right? And we're like, no, why is that? And there was never a real reason, you know, besides, well, you know, well, we can't bank on that actor or so. But like, you know, when you look at this, especially this genre, horror genre, right, you get a lot of no names taking the leads,
especially in horror.
Yeah.
And why is it that, you
so
know,
why is it that, you know, we are having a problem finding, you know, an Asian American, you know, actors, you know, to lead our film. So for us, we're like, you know what?
And the criteria for Asian actors is completely different from, you know, a non-Asian actors. So to us, that's so like mind-boggling. And you know, I think we'll you know, I won't say, you know, like we've come to a point of equality until I can see okay, Simu Liu do like 10 movies and even if they bomb all 10 of them, he still gets another one, like Johnny Depp. Yeah. Like if it's not,
and I want to see him in movies that have nothing to do with like you know, with Asian culture.
Yeah.
Right. And that's exactly, you know, with our film, that's what we, you know, set out to do. We're like, and we want to make a movie where we are not talking about Asian culture. You know, in fact, you know, these characters could have, you know, been Caucasian.
Yeah.
And yet we chose to, get Asian actors to play the leads, and so
And I'll also like to add, like when you look at, Caucasian actors, like Jennifer Lawrence, Scarlett Johansson, like at one point, these were not famous people. At one point, no one knew them. But the roadmap is designed for success for folks like that. And so for Asian talent,
usually we get they all go to they all audition for a role that's specifically states Asian male
nerdy
skater
guy. The computer guy, the Chinese delivery
if you really
guy,
look, if you really look at it, right? We have, and I'm sorry, we're sort of but we have so many talented Asian actors, and yet they only play supporting characters, for the whole stretch of their careers.
Why? Why
is that? So going into They Live Their Great, we're like, let's get. Let's actually write these really meaty, dramatic roles, and then let's get Asian actors to play these roles, and let the film speak for itself. Let the actors speak for themselves. So for us, we said, if there are no studios doing it, then what? Let's take the risk. Let's let's put it on our shoulders and let's do it. But whether it fails or not, at least we did something that we feel was an honest decision.
Of course. I love all those responses so much. I'm going to give it a. Oh damn! My horn's not working anymore, guys. Anyways, I'll just take the sound now. No. Amazing answers. And also, I just want to take a break to give a memo to Hollywood. Every role that Chris Pratt is doing, just give it to Simu Liu now. He could be Mario. He could be Garfield. That's fine. We're okay with that. Simu Liu. Let's do it. Let's do it, guys.
We'll pay money. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. I would totally watch Mario Simu Liu. I mean, that would be amazing. Okay. We got another question from Amanda Nicole de Souza. Amanda, appreciate you. I'm in my first writer's room as an Asian filmmaker in horror. Any advice to making the most of being in this space?
They put you in that writer's room because your uniqueness, your quintessential you-ness is what is of value to them. So you don't have to prove anything. You just know your value and don't let anyone tell you different.
Yeah, be you. Yeah. Be you. Be all that you can be. Absolutely. Yeah.
And right from from your own eyes, from your own experiences,
Yeah.
With a lot of persons from Asian descent who are living in America or other places that are not Asian countries, right? I think we straddle more than one culture. I think that's a very rich position to create from. And so right from that, and again, like what Roseanne said, you just be yourself.
Yeah.
And you'll find how authentic you are.
Yep.
And that was Amanda Nicole de Souza. The reason that I'm saying it again is because, Amanda, if you're in the writer's room right now, I have a feeling we're going to see and hear about more of your work later on in Hollywood. So keep at it and keep fighting that fight, because that's going to become a household name. Amanda Nicole de Souza. Thank you for your question. Going down the questions list, we also got one from Tung James, who writes, what are the challenges of being a filmmaker? Vang Bros being H-Mung and Roseanne being a woman. I guess we could start with Abel and Burley, if you guys want to speak to being H-Mung.
I mean, like being Hmong, I mean, it's like for us, it's a minority among minorities. We're from a very small tribal group of people scattered all throughout Asia and Southeast Asia. And to come from a culture, a people that for the longest time did not have a written language. Our written language was lost maybe sometime during, like in the ancient days. And it wasn't until the 1960s that two missionaries went into the mountains of Laos and created our written language for us. And so for us, being able to finally tell stories, being able to write it out and actually make a movie out of it is it's a milestone for us, you know, for at least, you know, I think for us being Hmong, challenges. Yeah, I think it's just, you know, I like every other, you know, I think Asian American filmmaker out here, you know, it's people look at you and they don't even give you the chance, and I think it's the consistency of always trying to prove them wrong.
How much culture do you have to like present in your work for people to understand where you're coming from? Because, you know, you are, like I said earlier, we are straddling more than one culture, right?
Yeah.
More than one identity. And so when you create, you know, you're creating from like dual identities. And so because of that, people that don't have a dual identity sometimes don't get you. And and so it's, you know, it's hard trying to find what is universal and you know, serve that up to an audience while still, you know, being true and authentic to your own experiences, you know. Yeah.
And Roseanne, how about your experiences as a woman?
I was going to talk about what Billy was talking about being the universal and the specific, is that I want to see specificity because I think that's where the universal is. And I want to see difference, and I want to see variety, and I want a richness. I don't want a homogeneity. And speaking to the woman part of it is, and also the Hmong part of it, is that minorities and underrepresented peoples are hot right now. And I hate saying that, but that's certainly what has been said to me, in that people are looking for diverse representation now. There's money in diversity. And one of the challenges that I deal with personally is that sense of self-doubt, that I'm not here on my own merit. I'm here because of some sort of quota. And that's just another subset of the stock standard self-doubt and imposter syndrome that all the best creatives suffer. I get a lot of joy out of reading my favorite, you know, reading writings by my favorite filmmakers, and almost all of them suffer from self-doubt or imposter syndrome. And I think that comes from the idea that you should never rest on your laurels, because if you think you're all that, you're never going to get better and you're never going to grow in your craft. So I see that a bit of self-doubt and imposter syndrome is healthy, but then at the same time, we need to back ourselves, because our quintessential usness is our value, on a mercenary level, but also on a deeper cultural level as well. So I guess I do a lot of, thinking about how do we further the conversation that is too old to you know, it's kind of like Black Lives Matter. Why do we need to say that anymore? It's such a old movement, but clearly people aren't getting the message. So we have to keep repeating ourselves, and we have to keep on treading old ground while pushing new ground. So that's a big challenge for me.
Thank you guys for sharing all of that. Honestly, it's incredibly important to note. I also do want to say I apologize for mispronouncing Hmong. I have Ron Burgundy syndrome, where I read it on the teleprompter and I just say the wrong thing. So I'm sorry.
All good.
Yeah, but having said that, thank you guys for that perspective. That is absolutely needed and absolutely all true. We have a question from Janelle as well, who asks, how do you balance horror and comedy? I remember in a UCB sketch transforming unusual and absurd situations, themes that are very much central to horror. Roseanne, I'd love to start with you.
I can't believe we haven't talked about Jordan Peele's work here.
Yes.
Who is the current master, of I think, again, I feel, no one's doing comedy like Americans are doing comedy right now. Maybe I'm not watching enough varied comedy, but I am just absolutely gobsmacked by, again, Ari Aster's work, which I maintain is the darkest pitch black of comedies, to Jordan Peele's work, which obviously started in sketch. I guess, again, make it your own. Watch all the stuff, watch all the horror comedies, watch all the horrors, watch all the comedies, and then innovate and pioneer. I think that's what we're looking for. And there aren't many Asians in this space. So there's an opportunity here, I reckon.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Burley and Abel, how about you guys? Perspective on comedy?
I mean, like, we don't work in the comedy space. Like, I personally, I think I would completely just suck at it. But we love comedy, and I think comedy, when comedy and horror comes together, you could have something really, really beautiful, like a movie like Get Out. I think, I mean, that was just, such a masterful piece of work.
Mm-hmm.
Not something that we would do, but would take the back seat and watch.
But Jordan Peele has had years of practice. If you look at all his skits, right, every single one has strong horror elements to it.
Yeah,
a reference to The Shining or something from the Twilight Zone, right?
Yeah.
But to answer this question, I think I don't know if we've tried it before or anything that we've done, but sometimes I think you could create comedy by having your characters behave in an unexpected way, and in a scene that might be frightening or a situation that might be terrifying, and yet they surprise the audience by doing something that may be unnatural, but yet at the same time feels natural. Mm-hmm. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Then I think if you could do that with the character, then you will maybe spark a laugh or a something out of your audience.
Of course. I love that you guys brought up Jordan Peele, because that Nope trailer is fire. Like, honestly, it's insane. Yeah. I'm so looking for. I have no idea what it's about, but it looks freaking amazing.
Sci-fi, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, sci-fi horror comedy. Yeah. There you go. But even when you take a look at something like Get Out, what made Get Out so successful as both a horror and a comedy is it didn't betray any of the characters. The Little Rel's character is a funny character, and they established that from the very beginning. So when you interweave his scenes with what's going on with Daniel Kaluuya and everything, it blends seamlessly because the audience already kind of expects those touches and flourishes of horror. And Little Rel ends up stealing the scenes that he's in because of that, because it's so perfectly blended together. So that's a very hard balance to achieve. I think you guys have done tremendous work doing that in all of your films so far. So fantastically well done. And for Janelle, definitely take notes from these guys, from Jordan Peele, everywhere that you've seen horror expertly blended with comedy, I think. All right. So if I do want to touch on something really, really quickly, which is that, one thing that's changed in horror significantly since the advent of horror cinema is the way at which it's being distributed these days. Back in the day, when we were going to see Scream, when we were going to see Event Horizon, all those movies in the 90s, we'd want to go into a theater and we'd want it to be pitch black and quiet and jump up with our popcorn and freak out and everything like that. And now with amazing services like Shudder, with Hulu as well, that horror is being delivered to our homes. So I got to ask, when you're writing and creating horror movies, and thinking about the fact that it's no longer necessarily theater exclusive, it's potentially coming to your homes. How does that, what sort of advantages does the new distribution models really give to making these movies? I guess I wanted to ask. So we'll start with Burley and Abel, and then Roseanne.
Yeah, I think, because everything is so accessible now, the great thing is that once you have a product that's going to go out to market, if it goes on any kind of platform, streaming platform, it's going to get seen by a ton of eyeballs. That's the good part. The part that makes it very hard on filmmakers now, on creators now, is that the control now is, the audience has complete control over how they watch your content. So in a movie theater, you can't just reach your hand up and swipe to the next thing. You paid $15 and you paid $50. You paid a fortune for popcorn. So you're going to sit your butt down and watch the whole thing. But when you're watching it at home or on a mobile device, you have to be now very surgical on how you create your content, on how you want to tell your story, because within 5 minutes, if they don't want it, they could go to the next thing. Within 10 minutes, they don't want it, they could go to the next thing. And so for us,
we had this rule where like the first 5 minutes, even if it may be a slower paced film, which is sort of the film that we have coming out. Within the first 5 minutes, something dramatic has to happen,
Right.
and then we'll hope that they'll stay on for the ride, so that's sort of our thing, especially with with films coming on to a streaming platform.
Yeah.
But for us though, we still run to the theaters when in a horror film is released on the big screen. I like watching my movies in the dark in a big giant room.
Yeah.
Roseanne, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, well, they said it better than I think I could have. The pros and cons of it, and how can we innovate? How can we keep this train going and pioneer something for the streaming age that still works on a massive screen as well? That's the thing to get your head around. But I still think horror, the reason why horror is so successful and why there even isn't, why Shudder even exists, is because it's eternal. I think it will be eternal, and everyone will keep finding ways to innovate it. So the small screen will never get in the way of a good horror story.
I think also, and we touched on it a little earlier, just it's hard to get movies made theatrically. Everybody's looking at budgets, everybody's looking at stars and everything like that. When you have movies or streaming platforms like Shudder, you can actually create these original movies that don't necessarily have to be tied to a Conjuring universe or an MCU. Not that I'm throwing shade at those; I love those too. But you can create something from scratch and get people to see it and get people to embrace different types of horror that aren't necessarily franchise based or multi-million-dollar blockbusters. So I definitely agree with all of your points. And I think it makes things so much more beneficial to have, channels like Shudder, where people can watch the movies like They Live in the Gray and just enjoy themselves. I think I'm getting the sign to wrap up. And honestly, if I was able to, I just love sitting here and talking to you guys and geeking out about horror all day. But I probably have nightmares and have to go to therapy. So I apologize for that. But it's so worth it to sit here and talk to you guys. And it's been wonderful. So thank you so much for all of your time. As a reminder, They Live in the Gray hits Shutters tomorrow. You guys just go check it out. It's such a good movie. It's so human, so scary, but it's really, really amazing. And Shadow in the Cloud, if you haven't seen that yet, it is on Hulu, and it is phenomenal. It is such a fun and amazing movie. And Creamery, which also Roseanne Liang also helped co-create, is also on Hulu. Amazing and hilarious cast in that one too. You guys, there's such a wealth of amazing work that you guys have done. So thank you so much. Any closing thoughts?
Get out there, guys. It's a big, wonderful world out there. So make us scared, make us proud.
Yeah.
Of course.
And thank you
Ladies
for
and
having
gentlemen,
us.
of course. Ladies and gentlemen, Roseanne Liang and the Vang brothers. I got it to work again. All right. Thanks everyone for watching.
That was amazing. And thank you so much, Mike, for your great moderation. That was such a fun conversation to watch. I can't believe how quickly it all went. And so I'm so glad to have this conversation, especially because this is a genre that I myself, as a scaredy cat, don't really watch as much. And so just learning from all of you has been really, really such a great learning experience. So thank you for spending this time with us. Thank you all for tuning in and watching. Again, shout out to all of our panelists. They Live in the Gray premieres tomorrow, as I think you may have heard once or twice. Please tune in to Shudder. We also are having a giveaway for a 1-year subscription for Shudder on Cape's IG at Cape USA. So if you are interested in potentially winning a 1-year subscription, please check that out. Also want to give a huge shout out to Jess Vu and Rianne Moore, who led tonight's program behind the scenes. And so thank you for making all of that possible. And thank you especially to Shudder for bringing us all together and championing Asian American stories in the horror genre. So thank you all and have a great rest of your night.
Thanks, Michelle.